مساء الخير.
مساء النور مس مرام، how are you؟
بحب ارحب بيكم كلكم، واللي ما يعرفش انوفا احنا اونلاين كورسز مستمره معاكم لجريد 9 and 10 لغايه الفري سيشن بيولوجي اول
Yes, Hisham, do you have a question?
Yeah, when exactly the lesson gonna start?
It's going to start
I'm
right
asking
now.
about it.
The lesson is going to start right now.
Okay.
I can't hear you well.
Thanks.
Most welcome. Hello, everyone. How are you? I'm going to switch off my video to have a faster internet connection. Okay, let's start. I'm going to give you a brief introduction about the syllabus. Of course, you all know there are two major things that we talk about. We have the core and the extended. The core in year 9, we are talking specifically about countries such as Egypt. The core curriculum, which is covered in year 9, and then the extended, which is covered in year 10, and that is the IGCSE. And this happens in several countries. One of them is Egypt. Okay, now our course is going to start in September, inshallah, and we're going to cover biology. I have groups for year 9 and year 10, which is the core and the extended. There are several codes that you might find for the syllabus. Here we're talking about 0970, which is the grading of 9 to 1. I'm sure that you've all heard of the A star, the A, the B, the C. This is the regular grading, but now we have a numerical grading, which is a 9 to 1 grading, the highest one being 9, and then 8, 7, 6, and so on until 1. The code that we're going to cover is 0970, which just basically means that you will be graded based on the 9 to 1 grading. The other one is 0610, which is A, B, C, and so forth. Okay, it is exactly the same. Now, in the IGCSE system, we work with the syllabus. The syllabus is everything you need to know about what you're going to study. Now, this is the syllabus for 2022. Whatever is in this booklet concerning all the sciences, the mathematics, the English, any subject in the IGCSE and the AS and the A level will supposedly be covered in 2022. So you have to have the correct syllabus because every several years it changes. Okay, now, what is biology IGCSE? Let's take a look. The papers that you're going to sit for are 3 papers. If we're talking about the core, which is year 9, you're going to have paper 1, which is multiple choice, paper 3, which is theory, and paper 6, which is the alternative to practical. Of course, paper 1 is the same as paper 2 in the extended. In the IGCSE, it's 45 minutes or 40 MCQ questions, and it is about 30% of the mark. Paper 3 and 4 for an extended are the theory, the questions, the theoretical questions that you need to solve and answer, of course, based on being able to analyze the question. which is 50%. It's the most important paper. It's the heaviest in the weighting. You need to perform well. And then the last one, here in Egypt, for example, we take paper 6, which is alternative to practical, and it is just 40 marks, and it comprises 20% of the total grade. Okay, of course, your grade will be supposedly out of 160, and then it's calculated from 200. It means you have to multiply by a factor. In the multiple choice, it's from 1.5. In the theory, it is 1.25. Okay. Now, what are the topics that we are supposed to cover? You have 21 chapters. Now, they might seem a lot, but you have covered this previously in the lower secondary checkpoint. Most of them are covered in the lower secondary checkpoint. Whether or not you're an IGCSE student, this will not make a huge difference. Of course, it's a privilege that you are an IGCSE student because you've covered this in the checkpoint and then you've covered this again in the core. And so you will actually have better understanding of the curriculum. Okay, 21 chapters, they do take a lot of time. They need careful planning. If you are going to study on your own, you need to put a schedule for yourself and be meticulous about it. You need to finish the chapters, solve classified questions for them, or according to topic questions, which basically means solving all the questions in the past papers related to the topic that you're studying. Because if you don't do that, and you leave all the solving until the end, it's going to accumulate. You're going to have forgotten by then what you've studied. So every lesson, what we do actually in my courses, we study a certain topic, and then we solve classified questions, and then you have homework to do. And this homework is related to the topic that we're studying. And then the following lesson, we also explain some material, solve classified questions on those two topics, so you don't forget what you've taken before. So for instance, if we're studying characteristics and classification of living organisms and we're done with the chapter, you've got homework to do. And then we started organization of the organism, which is cell, tissue, organ system, and so forth. You're going to have homework and you're going to solve questions on both topics. So by the time we reach the last one, it would be easy for you to remember, because it will be very difficult if you just leave it all until the end. So you have to continuously be solving questions on all the papers, regarding paper 2, paper 4, and paper 6. And as I have explained before, paper 2, multiple choice. Paper 4 is the theory, which is short and long answer questions. Concerning the extended, of course, you're going to have big questions with big marks, like 5 or 6 marks. And paper 6. Not all the topics have questions in paper 6, the alternative to practical related to it, but most of them do. Okay? All right. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, great. Now, the 21 chapters that you had previously covered in the core are those ones: the characteristics, the organization, movement in and out of cells, it's about diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. Biological molecules, it's about carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and vitamins, and those things. Enzymes might be new to some people, but this is also new for the people who were not IGCSE before. Plant nutrition, human nutrition, it's a big chapter, but it's very interesting. Digestion, of course, you've all studied this before. Transport in plants, some part of it will be new to you. The xylem, the phloem, transport in animals, totally not new. Perhaps the lymphatic system will be new, but the rest is old stuff. Diseases and immunity might have some new curricula. Gas exchange in humans, which is basically the lungs and stuff, so it's going to be easy. Respiration, aerobic and anaerobic in humans and other organisms. Excretion in the extended, you go further or deeper into the kidney. We talk about the kidney in great detail, and it's really so much fun. You will enjoy it. Coordination and response, if you have taken core before, you might find a few things that are new. If you were new to the IGCSE system, I believe coordination and response will be a new chapter. It is an interesting chapter, and it talks about sensitivity. Drugs is also an interesting chapter. Reproduction, you've got asexual and sexual in plants, and then of course reproduction in humans. Inheritance, also genetics and heredity, very, very interesting, and it usually runs very smoothly after reproduction, and then variation and selection. Selection in terms of artificial selection and natural selection. Now, those two chapters, organisms in their environment and human influences, those are ecology. And does anyone know what ecology is? Any idea? Has anyone heard this term before? I'm sure you've done. Ecology. Ecology is the study of nature of the environment, the organisms, how they live, what impacts their living in the environment, and so forth. So those two chapters, you must have covered them before. They're a bit large, but you will find some common things that you have taken before. And then finally, biotechnology and genetic engineering, totally new, very, very interesting. Okay, all right. Okay, now as I said, the syllabus is a very important booklet that you must have in soft and hard copy with you when you're studying with any teacher. Why is that? Because you can follow the contents. Simply look at the divisions in the units. Now, we said that unit 1 is characteristics and classification of living organisms. So we're going to start with the characteristics. Now, this is unit 1.1, and then you're going to find 1.2, 1.3, and so on until you are done with unit 1, all of it. So it's divided into two, the core and the supplement. The core, what we do is that we cover it in year 9. And the supplement, we cover this in year 10. But if you're studying year 10 for the first time, if you are new to the IGCSE system, of course, you cover both. Okay, so you don't just do the supplement, you do the core and the supplement in year 10. All right, now you will find, of course, things that are common, but then everything must be covered. So my advice to you, studying any curriculum, you must have the syllabus printed out or on the laptop, and then you tick as you go along. Now, why is that? You want to know whether your teacher is following the syllabus meticulously or not. You want to know whether you've studied and you finished a certain topic, you missed a definition, you want to go back, and always you can refer to the syllabus. So now, we are year 10, we're not year 9, so we're going to look at all of this and not just the core. Okay, now the first chapter is characteristics and classification of living organisms. All right, what is that? What does it mean to have a living organism? Why are you all sleeping? Are you with me? If you're here,
Yeah.
Yes, miss.
Okay. Now, please free to open your mics and interact and answer me.
Yeah, we are
How many of you are
on
I just need to
careful.
If you're new, raise your hand, please. Okay, Ahmed.
Excuse what you said.
Yes. Who's new to the British?
Can you,
If you are new, raise a hand. We have one. Habiba, I know that you're new. So I've got two. Two people new to the British system. Okay. What does it mean to say living things? When we talk about characteristics of living things, we have to know whether or not they're living. How can you identify a living thing? Now, if you've got something in front of you, like bacteria, how do you know whether this bacteria is living or non-living? What do you do, or how can you find out? Well, this is the whole thing about the chapter. How do you identify living things? Now, when we were little, We used to say, oh, it's it breathes, it can talk, it can move, and then when you develop, you find that there's more depth to it. So characteristics of living organisms basically talks about Mrs. Gren. Many of you are familiar with this term, Mrs. Gren. Okay, and what is Mrs. Gren? It is all the characteristics, the 7 life processes, as they say, the 7 life characteristics. What does that mean? It means that anything that is living must have those 7 characteristics. If only one is missing, then it is not living. All right? So as funny as it may sound, it must have all the 7 life characteristics, and we can apply this to anything that is alive. Okay. All right, let's dive into the chapter right away. Movement. What is movement? Well, we can all say that movement, it is just a change in the place. It is just a change in the position. Now, does this apply to all living things? Yes, of course, we can see this clearly in animals. But we can see this in plants. The plants can move. The plants open their petals. They curl up their leaves. They extend their roots. So they do move. The bacteria move. The fungi move. They move, but very, very slowly. Now, does that mean that they do have to change the position? No, not necessarily. It's just where they are exactly. The place doesn't have to change. Perhaps if they're looking to the sun and then in the evening they're looking the other way. So changing the position or the place, it doesn't have to be both. Of course, this is more prominent in animals, but it is also seen in fungi, in plants, in bacteria. So movement, if you're asked to define movement, and this is, we see this more in the core and not the extended. The extended, they go beyond this. But in the core, they do ask you, what is movement? Define movement. It's usually a 2-point question, 2-mark question. So it is an action by an organism. Now notice it says here part of an organism. So if we're talking about a plant, it can just be the leaves or the flower or the roots. They're being extended to find water or to grow. So just part of an organism, if it moves on its own, then that's enough. Changes position or place. Okay, so this is the definition of movement. Now, how do you know if we're saying the correct thing? How do you know if your teacher is correct? Always refer to the syllabus. Okay, so here it says, yes, this is what you need to know. This is what you're going to be accounted for in the test. All right, now I always say this to my students. When you are in the IGCSE, you do not need a teacher. You can be guided just by the syllabus. You've got exams, past papers online, if you've got mark schemes, and you can work on your own. I know I shouldn't say that, but well, it is the truth. Okay, moving on to respiration. The notion that respiration is breathing is something that we've had for a very long time. But what is respiration really? Do plants have mouths? Do plants have noses? No, they don't. So respiration, when you really look at respiration and study it, it is a chemical reaction. That means that it happens intracellularly. It happens inside cells. So respiration, it is not the act of breathing in and breathing out. This is breathing. That's a mechanical process, and you have to have organs to help you do that, like your nose, like your mouth. So many animals do breathe in and out. But respiration here is a chemical reaction that happens inside cells. Now, let's do a fast or quick check. Do animals respire? Do animal cells respire? Yes, they do. Every single cell in your body has to respire, so you're living. Do plants respire? Every single cell in the plant respire. Okay, question. Do plants respire in the morning or in the evening? Can anyone tell me the answer of that? And no answer is the wrong answer. Anyone? Michelle?
Morning.
Huh? Can
Morning.
in the morning? Okay, that's respiration. Now remember, respiration is a chemical reaction. And why is it important, Marwan? Because it releases energy, and always refer to energy as being released and not produced. We cannot produce energy, we just release it. How do they release energy? Through respiration. So respiration is done to release energy. Now, do you think they only need the energy during the day? They need the energy all throughout, day and night, right? So respiration needs to happen 24/7. Okay? So it's very important that all organisms respire the whole time. So plants respire day and night, animals respire day and night, fungi respire day and night, bacteria respire day and night. They're always respiring. Why? What is the purpose of respiration? To release energy. Okay? And again, do not confuse it with breathing. Breathing is mechanical. And then there's another term, I don't want to confuse you now, which is gas exchange. And what is gas exchange? From the name, gas exchange. It is just the exchange of gases. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, or the opposite. Gas exchange means the gases are just moving. Breathing, it's a mechanical process. I want you all to inhale and exhale. What are you doing? You're breathing. It's a mechanical process. You're using your muscles. You're using your lungs. You're using your nose. This is mechanical. And then what happens is the oxygen travels through the blood and reaches the cells. And what happens inside your cells? Respiration. So respiration, it's a chemical reaction that releases energy. Now, it needs something very important to release energy. It says here that it breaks down nutrients. What kind of nutrients? Can anyone tell me what kind of nutrients need to be released? I'm sorry. What kind of nutrients that we need energy to be released from? Anyone? Have you heard this before? GO-WC? What is GO-WC? Anyone? GO-WC? You've heard this before. You must have. Okay. People always get confused with the chemical reaction. They always tell you what is the chemical equation of this.
Miss,
Yes, Omar.
Miss, is it glucose and oxygen and water and carbon dioxide?
Perfect, Omar. Yes. And this is an easy way to remember. This is the chemical formula of, or equation of respiration, GO-WC. And as Omar said, this is glucose plus oxygen, and it releases water and carbon dioxide. So glucose and oxygen will give you water and carbon dioxide as waste product plus energy, of course, but we do not write energy in the equation. So this is the respiration. Always remember, respiration is GO-WC. As funny as it might sound, but it always kind of sticks in your brain, GO-WC. And what does that mean? Glucose combines with oxygen and then releases water and carbon dioxide as waste product. And why do we do this? To release energy. We have energy to be released from respiration, okay? And where does this happen? Inside all living cells, day or night, day and night, okay? Always remember this, respiration happens in all living cells 24/7 in plants and bacteria, in animals, in all living cells. Okay, now does respiration really require oxygen? Now we're going to cover that later, chapter 11 and 12. It doesn't require oxygen. Of course, we're talking about anaerobic respiration, but aerobic respiration requires oxygen. But all the time, it requires glucose. There must be a nutrient. That's why we say it's a chemical reaction that breaks down nutrients to release energy. Okay, question. Now let's see who's going to answer that. We said that the plants respire 24/7, right? Now we do understand that we as humans, for instance, we take oxygen when we breathe in, we take glucose when we feed. Now, how do the plants get their oxygen? Anyone? Omar, Marwan? How do they get their oxygen? Do they have holes in their leaves?
Miss,
Yes,
from the water?
Yes. Yes, Marwan, what were you saying?
From the water?
Not from the water, but of course, they do need water for photosynthesis, but they have tiny little stomata. I don't know if you've heard the term before. Stomata are holes in the underside of the leaves, and this is where the gases enter and leave. So the oxygen enters through the holes in the leaves. But the glucose, where does the plant get the glucose? We, as animals, we can eat, right? And we get the glucose from eating. But how does the plant get the glucose? It doesn't feed, it doesn't have a mouth, but it gets the glucose from a very important reaction.
Yes, it gets glucose from photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis.
Yes, thank you, Omar. Thank you, Habiba. So glucose is made by photosynthesis. We're going to talk about photosynthesis in a while now. All right, so very good. So respiration really needs glucose. How do we get glucose? Wallahi, as humans, we get it by eating, but plants get it by photosynthesis. So as long as there is glucose, it means that respiration is going to happen. So again, always remember respiration is a chemical process, the chemical reaction that happens inside each living cell 24/7. Imagine that you're not eating at all. And I know that, of course, we don't feed all day long, but we do have stored energy in our body. And this energy, or these nutrients, they're used for respiration so that we can release energy. So if you look at any organism and you find that it can move on its own and it can respire, then that's 2 out of 7, it's a living thing. Okay, moving on to sensitivity. Now, when I talk about sensitivity, does it mean that it is sensitive, it has feelings, and we're not going to hurt its feelings? We're not going to bully it or make fun of it? No, sensitivity here means detecting, sensing, from the name, sensitivity or irritability. It is the ability to detect and respond to stimuli. Now, big words, but what does detect or sense mean? Detection means you can, like the metal detector that we pass through when we're going to Carrefour or the airport, it detects metal. Oh, it's the same thing. Being able to detect or sense changes around us. What are those changes? We call them stimuli. يعني إيه stimuli? For example, if you put your hand on a hot pot, حلة سخنة, what will you do? It's hot. Will you think, oh, it's hot, my hand will melt, I have to withdraw my hand, my arm? No, you don't have time to think. There's no time. You have to immediately withdraw your arm. You do it without thinking. Subhanallah. And this is like a defense mechanism for survival. If we do not remove our arm, your hand will melt. You don't have time to think. So you have to have sensitivity, nerves, hormones. So what is sensitivity? It's the ability to detect or sense stimuli. يعني إيه stimuli? What are stimuli? Those are changes in the environment. Like notice that I said internal or external changes. Internal means inside your body, and external means outside. Yeah, the easy example of external, it means when you put your hand on a hot object and then you respond automatically by withdrawing your arm. Okay, this is external. Right. And you're making, of course, appropriate is a very important word here, appropriate responses. Yani, for example, if you put your arm, put your hand on a hot object, you don't blink. You don't remove your leg, you remove your arm. عشان كده we have to say appropriate responses. The appropriate muscles are involved. Okay, right. Concerning an internal environment, and this is for the extended only, internal environment. Internal means inside my body. Yani, how can there be changes inside my body? Now, I'm sure you've all heard of insulin, right? What is insulin? Why is there insulin in our bodies? What does it do? When do you think is insulin released in large amounts? When you do what? When you eat, right? After a meal. What does the insulin do? It just takes this glucose and helps it enter your cells so that your cells can do what? Can go WC, can respire. So the insulin is important so that you can utilize or make good use of the glucose. And of course, the excess glucose will be later stored. So is this an internal change? Yes, of course, you've eaten, you have a lot of sugar, you have a lot of glucose in your blood, and this glucose needs to be used. All right? Who's going to help us use it? The insulin. So your body will detect, I hope detect again, detect the glucose level, the high sugar level in your blood, and then it's going to release insulin. That's a response, right? So that your blood sugar level is normal. Now, do some people have problems in insulin release? Do you know anyone, a parent or
Yes.
parent?
Yes, most people have, so they need to take medicine, certain medication.
Yes, and they do have what? They have diabetes, عندهم مرض السكر, diabetes. It means that they cannot regulate normally on their own their insulin, so they need to take it. So after a meal, usually we see that when they're going to eat, immediately they take their insulin shot because their body cannot do this, cannot detect and respond to the sugar level. So they need external help. They need to measure their blood sugar. And if it's too high, they're going to take insulin. What if it's too low? They're going to take sugar. Okay? But thanks God, we've got this managed on its own. Why? Because we have sensitivity, because we are living. So sensitivity is not only detecting stimuli on the outside and responding to them, but also stimuli or changes that are internally happening in our bodies. Now, is this exclusive to humans? Of course not. Plants, how are plants sensitive? How do you think plants are sensitive? Do you think the sunflower, for example, turns towards the sun? The leaves open during the day and close a little bit and curl up during the night? They do that. And plants have hormones that help them be sensitive or have sensitivity. We have nerves and hormones as well to help our sensitivity. We're going to talk about that later, inshallah, in the chapter of coordination. Okay, so if you can move, if you can respire, if you've got sensitivity, then you're living. What else? Growth. What is growth? It means being fat. Okay, I ate for the past week every day McDonald's and pizzas and chocolates and ice cream, and now I am 100 kilos. Am I going to lose them? Yes, if I exercise and if I move, and if I stop eating, then I'm going to grow in reverse. I'm going to become smaller. So growth is not being fat. Growth, it is increase in the number of cells and the size of the cells. Okay, increase in your dry mass. What is the dry mass? It is your mass without the water, without the liquid. So if you burn somebody, whatever is left, this is called the dry mass. And what does it say here? It's the permanent increase. Permanent means you can't go back. يعني مش حد تخن وخس نقول the growth. No. The permanent increase in size, and we're usually talking about the cell number, the development of the cell. Okay, the cell has changed shape, has changed size, has changed number. They have multiplied. So do all organisms grow? Yes, they do. Do plants grow? Of course. Do fungi? Yes. Do all animals grow? Yes. Do bacteria grow? Of course they do. They grow, but just a little bit. They grow in size a little bit because bacteria, you know, are unicellular. يعني إيه unicellular? They're made of one cell. But most of the other organisms, they're multicellular, means they are made of more than one cell. So we call them multicellular organisms. But the bacteria are unicellular, but don't they grow? Yeah, they do grow, just a little bit. So they increase in size. So if they grow on their own, then they are living. Okay. Reproduction. Why is reproduction important? Why is it crucially important for the continuation of the species? What if there are no more elephants? We won't have elephants. What if there are no more plants? What if there are no more bees? What if there are no more fungi? We can't. No more mushroom. We can't live without all of these things. So reproduction is important. What is reproduction? It is just making more of the same kind of individual, the same kind of organism. How does it happen? There are many ways. It can be asexual, or it can be sexual. What is sexual reproduction? Sexual reproduction means there has to be gametes. يعني إيه gametes? يعني sex cells. There has to be, for example, pollen and ovule in plants, sperm and ovum in animals. There has to be a male gamete and a female gamete. Do they have to be different individuals? No, not really. You can have plants that have both male and female sex organs. They have the stamens and the carpels on the same plant. But it is called sexual reproduction because there are gametes involved. Now, what is asexual reproduction? يعني dividing into two, as simple as that. Asexual reproduction يعني one parent. A very easy example, bacteria. This is the bacterial cell. What does it do, the bacterial cell? It divides into two. As simple as that. This is asexual reproduction. Right. Do you know that we as humans, many animals, of course we have to reproduce sexually. There has to be two parents and two gametes and two different individuals. لكن هل عندنا, do we have some sort of asexual reproduction in our bodies? Of course, we have the cells growing. Your bone cells, when they grow, you have one cell that divides into two, and then they divide into two, and the two become four, and the four become eight, and the eight become 16, and so on. This is asexual reproduction. Okay, so reproduction is crucially important, not just because for the continuation of the species, or as of course it's going to become extinct, but also for growth. Okay. يبقى احنا كده 5 characteristics. If they are found, this is a living thing. We can apply it to anything. تعالوا نشوف in plants. Do they move? Yes, very slowly. Do they respire? Of course, to release energy. Otherwise, they won't live. Do they sense? Of course, they do. They know where the sun is. They know where the water is. The roots reach out for the water. Do they grow? Of course, they do. Do they reproduce? Yes, asexually and sexually. Plants, of course, have 2 methods. Right. Excretion. It can be confusing. Stop me if anyone is falling behind. Excretion. The term excretion, it is just basically removing waste. What is waste? We need to know what is waste so that we can properly define excretion. A waste product of metabolism, it is a waste product of a chemical reaction happening in your body. Okay, there are many chemical reactions, but the most famous one that we know is respiration. And what is respiration? Remind me, please. It is GO-WC. It is a metabolic reaction, a very important. That's a horrible thing. It's a very important chemical reaction that happens in your body. Okay, okay. Big C. So this is a metabolic reaction, metabolism, chemical reactions that help you survive, of course. And this is one of them, respiration. Okay, so what is the waste product of respiration? We've got 2. We've got water and carbon dioxide. Right? Can we hold a lot of water? Yani this water that is released from respiration, can we keep it in our body? لا, it has to be released. But the carbon dioxide, can we keep it in our body? No, it has to be released. It can't stay in your blood. It has to be removed. Removed through your lungs. Excretion. Basically, it is removing waste products of metabolism. An example is respiration. We have 2 waste products, water and carbon dioxide. Question, how is carbon dioxide released or removed? Through a breathing out. You breathe out, you exhale, carbon dioxide is removed. طبعا بيحصل gas exchange في الالveoli in your lungs, and then you exhale and remove carbon dioxide. How is water removed from your body? There are many ways. About the most water is released through urine. Urine, you remove water by urine. But only urine, when you sweat, that's water being released. But here water actually, the sole purpose of sweating is not excretion. It's lowering your body temperature. It's too hot and you sweat. فاحنا if we did not sweat مش هنعمل excretion. لا, we will do excretion بطرق ثانية, no problem, in other ways. لكن we do have to pass urine, of course. طيب, how else do we remove water? Through breathing out. Put your hand in front of your mouth and exhale. Are you going to find a little bit of vapor? Yes, this is some of the water being released. Now, how else do we release water? Through vomit, through crying, tears, all the exit ways of water. Okay, now where did the water come from? As a waste product of respiration. Okay, this is just one of the things that excretion does. removing waste products of metabolism. But does it remove other things? Yes, toxic materials, poisons. But who takes toxic materials? Who takes poison in their bodies? Any medicine that you're taking, you make good use of it, and then khalas, you don't need it. It has to be removed. That's toxic. Has to be removed. Okay? Any drugs that you're taking, if you're drinking alcohol, you have to remove it. It cannot remain in your blood. Okay? Fine. Two things that are excreted, waste products of metabolism and toxic materials. So what is the third thing? Substances in excess of the requirements. يعني إيه in excess of the requirements? It is more than you need. Like, for example, you take a lot of salt or you take a lot of water, an easy example. If you drink a lot of water, are you going to go to the toilet and remove it as urine? Are you going to pee a lot? Yes, the more water you drink, the more you will pee. بكل بساطة. Are you going to sweat a lot? Wallahi, if it's hot, you're going to sweat too. So is water here in excess of requirement? Is it a result of respiration? لا. This water بقى, and I drank a lot of water. يبقى أنا intake of water too much for me. I don't need that much water, and it has to be removed. يبقى three things when you define excretion, when you are asked what is excretion? It is the removal from organisms. It's very important that you say from organisms. An organism نفسه هو اللي بيعمل removal of three things. You have to mention those three things. Usually, an excretion question is worth 3 marks. You have to say of waste product of metabolism, of toxic materials, and substances in excess of requirements. Okay? So 3 things are being removed from the organism. Waste products of metabolism, toxic materials, and substances in excess of requirements. But does this happen in humans? Yes. In animals? Yes. In plants? Yes. They do respire. The extra water is being removed. The extra carbon dioxide is being removed. Any toxic material absorbed by the roots, it's being removed. Any water that is in excess of requirement, or any nitrates, or any magnesium, anything that is not required in the plant, it has to be removed. So excretion happens in all living things. Okay? Fine. Not to be confused with a passing stool. Poop, معلش. You cannot call this excretion. Why? Why not? أولاً ده مش metabolism. It is not a waste product of metabolism. It is not considered toxic. And it is not in excess of requirement لأن it is not a requirement أصلاً. What happens is that you eat and then you digest, you absorb the material that you require, and then whatever is left, the food, debris, the roughage or fiber that you cannot digest and you cannot make good use of, just passes out of your intestinal tract. So you don't need it. Okay, so it is not to be confused with defecation or egestion. Excretion is totally different. And an easy way to remember is that excretion happens in all living things. Plants do not go to the toilet. Okay, now the last one, and that's very easy, nutrition. What is nutrition? From the name, nutrition, taking in materials. And we're going to stop here at taking in materials and say, how are we going to take these materials? How do you feel? Taking in materials, how? It depends on the organism. Wallahi, if this organism is an animal that has organs for ingestion, for feeding, it's going to take it through a mouth, for example, or an opening. Fine. We're going to go to the second part and say, why often do we need these materials? We need them for energy, for growth, and development. Why do we need nutrients? To grow, to survive, to release energy. Remember, release, not produce. Release energy so that we can carry out the life processes. We can move, we can run, we can sense, we can do everything. We need energy. Energy had been as they. How we're going to get this energy? We're going to get it from food. الفود ده اللي أنا هستخدمه هنا. Go WC. Okay? Okay. Going back to what Omar said. Taking in materials for energy growth and development. As animals, we're going to take through our mouth, for example. The plants, are they going to take glucose? Omar said, no, they don't. They need materials to make the glucose. Yani they're not going to take the glucose, they're going to make it, they're going to synthesize it. And this is photosynthesis. But do they take in materials? Aywa, they take carbon dioxide and water. Those are the raw materials. When you are asked about the raw materials for photosynthesis, what are they? Carbon dioxide and water. طبعا in the presence of light and with ions. And this is photosynthesis. طيب then nutrition? Yes. لأن في الآخر I am doing what? I am making glucose. And this glucose is needed later for respiration. يبقى nutrition for the plant is photosynthesis. يبقى what is photosynthesis? It is the plant nutrition. It is how the plant feeds. طب كلمة photosynthesis, if you want to break it down, photo means light. And synthesis, means making, manufacturing, producing. So what is being produced in the light? Glucose. Why أصلا does the plant need glucose? عشان تعمل respiration. If it did not produce this glucose, it will not respire and it will die لأن there will be no energy. And the energy is required for life processes. Okay? But plants only, طبعا, they are the ones that are able to photosynthesize. We call them autotrophs. But other organisms are heterotrophs. يعني إيه heterotrophs? They are taking in the nutrients directly. بياخدوا organic and inorganic materials. يعني بياخدوا carbohydrates, the proteins, fat, the vitamins. They take it externally. They cannot manufacture it on their own. لكن in plants, they are autotrophs. They make organic materials. They cannot make inorganic ones. يعني بياخدوا المغنيسيوم من برا, بياخدوا النيتريت من برا. لكن they can make their own glucose and of course later on the amino acids, proteins, fats, and so on. Okay? All right. This is a very easy chapter and everything is relatable. When you apply this to all living things, if they can move, if they can respire, they can sense, grow, reproduce in any method, excrete and make nutrition, feed one way or another, يبقى it's a living thing. يعني لما نيجي نبص على البكتيريا, it can perform all of these. Protozoa, it can perform all of these. Bacteria, yes. Fungi, okay, كل كده بيعمل Mrs. Grant. Viruses, can they do all of this? When we speak about viruses, the virus can't do any of this. Can the virus do any of the Mrs. Grant? No. The only thing that the virus can do is reproduce. On its own? لا برضو not on its own. Virus أضعف من كده. The virus can only reproduce inside a host cell. يعني لازم يكون جوه bacterial cell so that it can reproduce. طب how is it going to reproduce inside the bacterial cell? The bacterial cell itself is making a copy and then dividing. طب لو الفيروس هنا, it is going to have another copy of the virus. So the virus can only reproduce, well, not on its own, but inside a host cell. And it cannot do all the Mrs. Grant, يبقى it is not considered a living thing. لو أنت محتار, if you are not sure of any organism, just apply all the Mrs. Grant, and then you're able to see whether or not it is living or not living. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay, let's check if we are on the right track. We can always refer to the syllabus and see whether or not we're doing this correctly. Right. Movement. Is it the same thing that we talked about? Yes. Respiration. Yes. Sensitivity, internal or external, and make responses. Now notice that this is the extended, لكن في الكور ما بتكلمش internal ولا external. بتكلم على external بس. Growth, permanent increase in size, cell number, cell size. Excretion, the three things that we talked about. Waste product of metabolism, toxic materials, substances in excess of requirements. Nutrition, taking in materials. لو احنا animals, we're going to take the materials, the organic materials directly. لكن the plants هياخدوا الماتيريالز اللي هيعملوا بيها الجلوكوز to release energy during respiration. Okay, plants require ايه؟ حاجات دي. Animals need organic compounds and ions and طبعا water. This is a 1.1. Okay? Now, what are we going to do next? We're going to check whether or not we know what we've covered. Okay? Let's see. This is the according or the classified. And we'll see who got this chapter. All right. Now, who's with me? Open your mics, please. Who's awake and who's sleeping? Yalla, let's see. Marwan, can you answer me? Very easy question. Marwan or Omar, who's going to answer?
Yeah.
Marwan. Yeah. This diagram shows how a seed would change. Okay? After it is planted in the soil and watered. Okay. Now, it shows a sequence of events that happen. We'll be all like, which characteristics of living things are demonstrated by this sequence? We have Mrs. Grimm. Which ones do you think are shown
Growth.
here? Growth, of course, growth. Very easy, and it can be seen easily. What else?
And sensitivity. B.
Yes. Why sensitivity?
Miss, because I think that every time she grows, she like the building of sensitivity increases.
That's close. That's close. Which direction is it growing?
Up.
Only up?
Yeah.
What about the roots? Take a look at the roots. Are they growing also?
Yeah.
Yes, but are they growing upwards? لا, they're growing downwards. Right? So
Yeah.
this seedling, it has grown, the shoot is growing upwards. And of course, we have a justification for this upward growth. Why does it need to grow above the ground? To see the sunlight, to photosynthesize. Right? Like, why do the roots need to grow downwards? To reach for water. So each part is growing differently. Remember sensitivity? And remember movement, it's a growth of part of the plant. So movement can apply here as well. But the most important one, of course, is growth and sensitivity. Growth, we can see it's growing, and sensitivity, why? You'll take this in chapter 14, because it is growing. The root is growing towards gravity. It's called gravitropism or geotropism, growing towards the earth. And the shoot is growing towards the sun. It's called phototropism. Okay, so this is both growth and sensitivity. Excretion we cannot see. لما تحتار قوي by elimination. Nutrition and reproduction really not applicable. You can't see them. And so the only one correct is growth and sensitivity. Well done. Okay. Now, this is an easy question that usually people sometimes fall into this trap. This particular question, who can answer me? Biology is the study of living things. Omar, are you still here? Ahmed? Hisham? Which characteristic applies to all forms of life? All forms of life. Which one of them? Who's going to answer? Marwan, can you answer this as well? Habiba? All forms of life. Let's walk them through together.
Miss, like you need the names.
Which one of those applies to all forms of life? We're talking about Mrs. Grimm. Which one happens in all living things? Which one do you think happens in all living things? If we're going to talk about this one, for example, possess a nervous system. Do plants have a nervous system?
No.
No, so it cannot be applied to all forms of life. صح كده? Right. Carry out photosynthesis. Do animals photosynthesize? No, ما ينفعش. Right. We have two left. Able to move from place to place or able to reproduce. Which one happens in all living things?
Able to reproduce.
Able to reproduce, right? because able to move from place to place doesn't necessarily happen in all living things. They are able to move parts of their body. Remember, position or place. Remember the definition of movement, position or place. So they do not really have to move. The plants do not move their place, but they move their position. Okay, but everybody is able to reproduce. All forms of life, all living things are able to reproduce. Okay, so this is just a sample of the questions that we ask and answer in the class and have homework on. Okay, let's do this one. The living organism can make its own food, get rid of toxic materials, detect and respond. What other 4 processes must organism carry out to stay alive? We have Mrs. Gren. Okay, let's see what we have. Can make its own food. Which one of the Mrs. Gren is this? I think it is nutrition, right? It's talking about photosynthesis. Get rid of toxic materials, that's excretion. Detect and respond, that's sensitivity. يبقى فاضل لنا ايه في Mrs. Gren؟ Right? We have movement left, reproduction, growth, and respiration. يبقى what is left? All those 4. Okay? This question is repeated a lot of times, but they do change some of the criteria here. You just have to, underline and make out what these are so that you're able to find out what is left. Okay? Now, this question, very easy question as well. Some yeast, sugar, and water are mixed in a test tube. Now, this you'll be able to answer if you are an IGCSE student already. You've taken this in the course. The diagrams show the test tube at the start and after 1 hour. Okay. Which process causes this change? Now, at the beginning, we have yeast, sugar, and water. Yeast is a form of it's type of a fungi, and it has sugar, and there is water. Okay, what is the yeast going to do with the sugar? We said that sugar or glucose is very important for which process? Go WC, respiration. Okay, so the yeast is going to do what with the sugar? It's going to
Respiration.
respire, excellent, and release water and carbon dioxide. What is carbon dioxide? Oh, the bubbles of the gas. Now, this question is repeated, but in a different way. They ask you, what gas is this? So which gas is this? طبعا, it is carbon dioxide as a waste product of respiration. Okay? Now, in every session, we solve paper 2 and paper 4. If we have time, we solve paper 6. Usually, we have sessions for paper 6 alone to have enough time to practice. And then we give homework on those papers, and we check the homework, inshallah. Okay, I'm done. Does anyone have any question? Smaran, do you have anything to say?
Thank you so much. And sorry for the disconnection at the first.
It's okay. Okay.
Thank you,
All
Miss.
right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks you all. See you in another session with my honor.
Okay. All right. See you.